welcome to the Career Ready Podcast. Learn about resumes, cover letters, LinkedIn, interviewing, and all things you need to be career ready with the Career Service Center at College DuPage. I'm one of your hosts, Pierre Michaels. Later in today's episode, I'm going to lead the conversation on doing career research when you are starting at a point of unknown or minimal direction.
And I'm your other co-host for this episode, Marisela Morales. I'm going to start our episode today by discussing one of my favorite resources, which complements the one we discussed recently. I recommend it like Cast Career Coach. Today, we are going to discuss ONET. While both platforms draw from similar resources, the Federal Department of Labor, each serves a distinct purpose. Career Coach is region-specific and includes a resume builder, whereas ONET provides more national data and supports an in-depth career exploration opportunity. Like Career Coach, ONET offers information on job tasks, career exploration, and offers information about average salaries and job market projections. However, ONET also allows you to explore careers by clicking on specific tasks, which will then lead you to other occupations that perform similar duties. This allows you to do more deep dives. You can also conduct career exploration based on your RASIC interests, review detailed work activities and work contexts, and find professional associations related to your field.
Thanks for reviewing ONET as the introduction, Mari. That's a very valuable resource. As you quickly highlighted, there are so many different ways to use it to explore, and that's great that you have introduced that, because as we continue today's conversation, I'm going to be referring to ONET as a resource that can be used to dive deeper into what we're discussing today. So what we're discussing today is really moving forward within a job search, and that could be a difficult process for individuals. Sometimes people know what they want to do and they could just start going at it. But sometimes we need to take a step back, reflect, think about what is out there. So today, that's what we're going to be doing, is really starting from this point of no or minimal exposure and just learning what those different career options are. It's very common for people to ask or be wanting to reflect on this thing of passions or curiosity. But when we do that, it is building off of what we've already been exposed to. Maybe that is through coursework, experiences of employment, volunteering, different things like that. So, Mari, I'm curious, what is your take on starting off from passions and curiosities?
I think that it's definitely something that is helpful, it's useful. And what I like to do is, whenever I'm talking about Holland Codes, I try to explain to them that Holland Codes is a mixture of skills and goals and interests, because it is my understanding that even though you are good at something, that doesn't necessarily mean that it brings you fulfillment. And so when I describe a career to them, or when I describe something, I tell them, okay, well, you think about something that you're good at. What are you good at? And does it make you happy? Because if somebody, for example, is good at math, they might be good at math, but does it make them happy? Because if they're good at math, but they're not happy, well, then we don't recommend that they become an accountant. But then I use myself. I happen to love music, but I can't carry a tune to save my life. So I shouldn't be a musician, right? I have no musical skills to speak of. So just because we love something doesn't necessarily mean that we should be in it. And just because we're good at it doesn't mean that we should do it for a living. It has to be both. And so then you think about, well, what experiences have you had, whether in school, at work, where you have been successful and felt fulfilled? Where did you feel that balance? So it could be in science, in math class, or if you were doing a part-time job where you were doing customer service, were you fulfilled? And I actually did have somebody tell me that they were working at, for example, they were doing, I think they were doing like fast food, and then they wanted to go into culinary. Great. But then they were working, and then I had somebody who was working with their dad. They knew how they were working at their father's business. They knew everything about auto mechanics. They had the skill, but were they happy? No. So then that's all about probing. So it's about balance. So it is fair to probe and to ask both. Do you have the skills? Do you get the fulfillment? But you probe about experiences, whether it is professionally, academically, even volunteering, but asking those two components, fulfillment and skill.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to make with this as we're using these guided reflections. We're asking people to reflect on these things because even if someone isn't passionate about it, but when they're asked, what are you passionate about? They go to, well, I'm good at this. Right. But there's a distinction between I'm good at it and I'm passionate about it. So I think that is a great point to really keep in mind as you're going through this process, is really thinking about the differences between passions, curiosities, skills, interest. I, like you, very interested in music. I really don't have any interest in playing an instrument, singing. I'd rather just enjoy it.
Right. And I love that you point that out, because that actually was something that I experienced not very long ago, where a young man actually did take art classes, but he wanted to pivot because he decided that although he was passionate about art, he did not want to do it commercially because he felt that he did not want to do something that interfered with, he did not want to do somebody else's vision. He wanted to do his own. Yeah. And if he went into something that was artistic, no matter what it was, whether it was, digital marketing, whatever it was that he was going to go into, it was going to be somebody else's vision and not his own. And he did not want to compromise his vision, which I thought was really remarkable. I really respected that. But then it opens up the conversation to, okay, well then what other skills can we explore? What other career pathways can we explore?
Yeah. So to, reflect on these things are great. Sometimes the struggle with this is we don't have the experiences, the opportunities to really reflect on, to know what we're passionate about, what we're curious about, what we're skilled at, all these various pieces. So if you're just struggling with those ideas, I'd recommend that you go out, get involved in some way, start volunteering, start really paying attention to your courses, your different subjects, the ones you enjoy. How are you applying yourself, and spend some reflection on that, and then adding to those ways that you're applying yourself to help move forward.
Absolutely.
If you're at that stage, yes, we want you to go out and get involved, but there's also just the abilities to be creating exposure to some of these different paths through different research databases. You've heard it already mentioned earlier on today's episode, Career Coach, ONET being great resources, Career One Stop being another Department of Labor site that we could be going to explore careers. And what I want to really spend the time today talking about is the way different jobs are classified to help us explore jobs and start finding out different opportunities. So when we are moving forward here with this limited background, we may want to start taking some interests into what is out there. And we can start using assessments to help identify those paths. And when we talk about assessments, we could be breaking these down into two main categories. There are personality assessments and there's career assessments. Personality assessments can be helpful in generating some awareness and guidance towards careers. So Mari, when we're talking about personality assessments, can you expand on that, or you have a little bit to share here?
When I think of personality assessments, I usually think of Myers-Briggs, and I am a huge fan of Myers-Briggs. I think personality tests, I'm a 90s kid. So I think of like BuzzFeed and all those different personality tests that they always had. And so I kind of love Myers-Briggs myself because it is, a personality test on steroids, and it could help you in terms of thinking about what might help you in terms of maybe a career pathway, or give you an idea. And so that is what I think of when it comes to personality assessments.
Yeah, so the personality assessment's giving us more insight on ourselves. And then as a result, here are some careers that we may want to explore.
Precisely, because Myers-Briggs sort of is an assessment that evaluates the way that you see the world and then how it affects the way that you interact with it, if that makes any sense. And so then based on that, they'll give you a lot of different, depending on the assessment that you take, give you different sort of feedback, including career pathways that you might want to explore. And so there are different letter combinations that you might get. Like I myself fall into the INFJ category. And some individuals might not relate to the letters that they might get. I myself actually do. I actually really did like Myers-Briggs. An INFJ, for example, is like a personality type that is, it stands for, and please forgive me because it's been a while, INFJ, it's introvert, nurturing, feeling, and judgment, I believe. And so essentially what that profile means is that it's somebody who is innately introverted. However, for the greater good, they will put themselves out there. And so, for example, right now, I'm on a podcast. I am not, under normal circumstances, going to put myself out there. Put me in a party, you will see me in the corner hoping that somebody brings their dog or their baby because I don't want to interact with anybody. I don't like to socialize. However, if it means helping somebody, I will put myself out there. I will table events. I will give speeches. I will do podcasts because I want to help people. And that is what an INFJ does. And so there's a lot of different things that you can kind of take away from Myers-Briggs that I highly recommend. And as a matter of fact, so individuals that might want to kind of take a look at what a Myers-Briggs assessment would tell them what kind of insights they might gather from a Myers-Briggs assessment may do so, whether if you happen to be a COD student, a College of DuPage student, we actually do have that available here through the Counseling Center for a nominal fee. Or even if you are not a College of DuPage student, you can even find an assessment online. There's many free online assessments that you could do, for entertainment purposes, but they're still fun and very insightful, such as 16 Personalities.
Yeah, and if you're paying for it, if it's free, use the resources that makes sense for you, and being able to, take those as a starting point.
Absolutely.
Right? So those were personality assessments, which again is more about the person, you as a job seeker, as an individual, and then careers are kind of the byproduct of that, or help with some of that guidance. But there's also career assessments. And the big distinction here is career assessments are actually aligned directly to careers, where the personality assessments are more understanding of yourself. The career assessment helps with that, but it also takes those results and tells you here are careers that fall into those same classifications. So that's what we're going to be spending most of the rest of our remaining time talking about, are two different career assessments that are out there. And both of these that I'll be talking about, you could complete for free on that Career One Stop resource. So these are out there available to you. And I just want to make you aware of how they operate and how you could be using these if you are really at that point of the unknown. So this first assessment that I want to talk about is based off the work of John Holland. We don't have to go into the history of John Holland, but he's, the grandfather of career assessments. And he has the RIASEC assessment that is out there, RIASEC being RIASEC. We'll get a little bit deeper into what those letters represent in a moment. There's a lot of free assessments out there, just like we discussed with Myers-Briggs. College of DuPage also provides 2 assessments that you could be paying to complete related to this. But as we go through here, I'm just going to break down these 6 different areas and being able to understand these 6 areas as the results of the assessment. So when we're talking about career assessments, the results are not job titles. Job titles are the alignment of your results and how jobs are classified. So knowing that your actual results as you do this tie into the RIASEC 6 letters, and then being able to look at the different job titles that have that similar coding or classification. So as we go through this real quickly, just highlighting what these 6 areas are. First, we get the R, the realistic. Very simply put, these are people that like real things. They like to work hands-on. Next, we have the I, or investigative individual. This category's name is kind of self-explanatory. It's really about problem solving and looking into underlying issues. Third, we have A, or artistic. And when we think of artistic, a lot of people think of the fine arts, which is part of this artistic classification, but it's really about valuing creativity. So if you're thinking of a teacher developing a lesson plan, that is also artistic. This brings us to the S in RIASEC, and this stands for social. Social individuals aren't necessarily people that like to socialize. I know a lot of introverts that actually score high in this S category, myself being one of those. I am naturally not an extrovert, but I really like to engage and help people. Kind of like what Mari was saying related to her Myers-Briggs assessment. So remembering that regardless if it's a personality assessment or these career assessments, they have broad definitions and ways that they could be applied and interpreted. Next, we have enterprising, or the E. And in a broad perspective, these are individuals that like to lead other people or see things get executed. Another way to really think of enterprising personalities are entrepreneurs. And then finally, we get to our C, or conventional. And conventional tends to be data-driven or clerical-driven individuals. They focus on organization and making sense of information. So as we complete these assessments, or maybe you're just doing some self-reflection on those definitions, being able to identify what we identify with or score the highest within, and then we can take that and we can apply those results to ONET. You heard us talk about ONET earlier in today's episode, and you can apply filters so then we could see careers that align with those results. So once you start looking at those results, remember that these are jobs that have that classification. These aren't necessarily jobs that you will be enjoying. So when I do this assessment, I come back as an RSA. I am realistic. I like to work with my hands. I am social. You heard me mention this earlier. I just love to help people and support people. And then at the end there, the artistic, I like creativity. I really don't see myself as that creative of a person, but I do like thinking of different ways of getting involved. When you look at my current job, that realistic component really isn't there. It's not super heavy on the job. There's, working with resumes and people and being involved in different ways there, but it's not a strong component of the job when we look at these classifications. A lot of my hobbies let me be realistic to help me better apply myself in that way. But being social, being able to help people, that's a big component of this job. Being artistic from a creative standpoint of writing a resume, thinking of different language to share with an employer or different ways to create a presentation, right? These are all components of my job, which leads me to satisfaction within the work. But bringing it back to, it doesn't always mean that you will enjoy the job. A job title that is even more closely aligned to an RSA is a preschool teacher. And anyone that has seen me around kids would know that's not the job for me. Right? I love kids. I just can't be there day in, day out. But when we think of that job, being hands-on, doing different arts and crafts activities, social, being able to help people, being artistic and very creative in that work, that is a preschool teacher. But that's not me, right? So even though that classification aligns the setting, there's other components here that we have to be aware of. So that's why we do a little bit more of this research. Mari, anything you want to add as we kind of think of applying the results of an assessment?
No, I completely agree with you about continuing the exploration and seeing it the way that I explain it whenever I'm reviewing the results to students is to not, because we're not boxes. These are tools. These are exploration tools, right? We are human beings. We are individuals with unique personalities. So we are not people to be put into boxes. So if we come across, for example, like one of the top, and you had asked me before about my RIASEC result, and for the life of me, I can't remember it, unfortunately. However, I do remember one of the top career choices that I was recommended to explore was a dancer, and I have no rhythm. I can't dance to save my life. That said, I understand why it would be recommended to me because I love the arts. Again, I have no artistic skill to speak of, but I really love it. So I understand where the assessment is coming from. It's pulling from our interests. So it's trying to kind of understand what would fulfill our interests and our needs, right? And so when it gives these different suggestions, that's all that it is. They're suggestions. Mm-hmm. And it's just an opportunity to explore. So don't give up. We are not boxes to just be put, to just be categorized. These are tools, and it's an opportunity to explore different pathways. And if it doesn't to fit whatever it is that you're interested in, that's okay. And just continue moving along and exploring, and continue exploring other assessments as well. Don't feel like you need to just stick to one assessment. Try different assessments that are out there, especially the free ones. I always use the saying that one of my previous coworkers would say, which is free as me. There are so many different assessments out there that are free. Take a look at them, whether it's Myers-Briggs, whether it's the interest assessment on Career One Stop. Don't limit yourself in terms of your exploration because you are worth the time.
So we just talked about RIASEC being one of these starting points. And as we think of those 6 areas, this is really about how we want to apply ourselves. And then another great starting point as an assessment is a work values assessment. And this is also available free on Career One Stop for you to complete. I like this one because this is more about what we want to get out of the job, right? So the RIASEC being more about how we like to apply ourselves, and then there's those classifications of jobs related to that. The work values assessment is structured in a very similar way where they have these 6 different categories, but these 6 different categories are more about how we like to be rewarded on the job or how the jobs play out, and we get to identify, satisfaction within that. So I'll encourage you to go onto Career One Stop or find other places to do this work values assessment, but that same thing holds true that you can identify those same 6 areas. Just like RIASEC, it measures 6 areas, and then you could apply those through the ONET filters. There's no catchy abbreviation to this one, but being able to do that assessment can really help you get started. So after completing the assessments related to the RIASEC interest or the work values, you can start evaluating all these different job titles that align with those classifications. And I always like to then take these suggestions from these assessments and group them into 3 categories. There are those that we are interested in because we already know about them. There are those that we're not interested in because we already know about them. That's me in the preschool, right? I know enough, not an interest to me. But the area I really like to spend time on is the ones I'm not aware of. Maybe I've heard of it, but I just don't really quite know about it. I don't really understand what they do on that job. I need to create that exposure. And through this list of all these careers, there's going to be a lot that you've never even heard of. You didn't know they existed as options. These are the ones that we really want to spend more time on. Because if we were so confident about the ones we already knew, we probably wouldn't be doing these assessments. So being able to create that awareness helps us fill in the gaps so then we become better aware of the possibilities of our future. So after we become better aware of the possibilities, the next step is to do some research. And that is where Career Coach, Career One Stop, O-Net come back into play. So we've been referring to these as sites that you could be going to do the assessment. So it's great that we get familiar with these sites because then we could start doing that deep dive. You heard Mari talking about O-Net earlier in today's episode, where you could be researching these different careers and really expanding more into them. But at some point, you're going to do all this research and then you're going to say, but I want a little bit more. And then at that point, having conversations with professionals within the field can be really helpful. And that will be something that we talk about in an upcoming episode. Thanks to all our listeners for joining us today. We hope you feel better prepared to start researching career options from a point of unknown. There was no listener question in today's episode, but if you have a question you want to hear answered in a future episode, you can submit it to careerpodcast@cod.edu. We look forward to sharing more with you in our next episode.